Hi, I'm Eric Baylin. I am the current Sullivan County Poet Laureate. And I'm going to be reading a few poems today that relate to the tiny houses exhibit. I really love these little houses. I love the whole concept of miniaturizing the familiar. It's a theme that's emerged off and on through my poetry throughout the years. And I was thinking about size and the nature of how we perceive the size of things. And as I was thinking about this, I recalled this memory of driving along one day, and I saw this animal off in the corner of my eye. It was an unfamiliar animal, and I was driving along. I thought, that was the tiniest horse I've ever seen. And then as I drove further, I thought maybe it wasn't a horse. Maybe it was a dog. I said, wow, that was the biggest dog I've ever seen. So the same animal was either big or small, depending on my point of view, I thought. It actually turned out to be some kind of miniature pony, but this whole idea of size being relative, I mean, I think I feel that the same way about myself sometimes. Sometimes I feel small, and sometimes I feel big. So this whole idea of tiny houses is fascinating. So I was looking through my poems, and I found one entitled Continuum that had to do with this relative nature of size. Continuum. Something crawled on my arm. Instinctively, I brushed away a large black ant who went flying to the porch floor. An exhilarating flight, or was it terrifying to be airborne? I'd have broken bones or back from such heights. It wandered in circles and then seemed to find its sea legs. Stopped to groom, or was it brushing off some finer microbe crawling on its leg, sending it miles to the porch floor? Then, as I was thinking about this event, this occasion, and writing about tiny things, this title of a poem emerged without the poem itself, and the title was 10 Tiny Poems about the Tiny. 10 tiny poems about the tiny. And then I thought, well, now I have to write this poem. So I had to think of 10 tiny things, and I started writing them, and they got longer and longer and longer. And then the more I wrote, they got shorter and shorter and shorter until they were finally only 3 words each. So I called them haikulets. Tiny haikus. So as I'm reading them, see if you can visualize each little tiny thing. It's either an image or maybe a feeling that they convey. Glitter bit gleams. Spider thread sways. Pepper ground stings. Salt grain surrenders. Poppy seed sticks. Sand grain grates. Dewdrop dangles. Snowflake soars. Sleet pellet pops. Dust mote floats. 10 tiny poems. The next one is specifically about tiny houses, making tiny houses. And for this one, I just had a lot of fun. Here we go. Making tiny houses. If I were a grasshopper, a miniature, small as they come grasshopper, that is, I would gather blades of grass, weave myself a fine little house with class, the size of maybe a ping pong ball, about that small. Something not exactly by the book, like maybe a geodesic dome look. I could build it by myself, I could do it, with a freshwater stream running right through it, a miniature rose garden, tiny turnips and peas, and maybe the petitest of papaya trees. Then I'd nestle on my little willow pillow, watch the fat clouds billow, sip a cup of morning dew with a bit of grass to chew, kick my 6 little legs in the air, watch the days buzz by without a care. If I were an ant, well, then I'd know exactly what to do. Well, of course, you knew. A hill with a secret passageway or two to store my picnic crumbs of sweetened cornbread and other bits I can carry on my head. Most of all, I would have a dance hall where my friends and I would do the latest ant crawl to blasting music, best in the land, played by an awesome calypso cricket band. Picture it if you can. 1,000 ants, all those little feet, scruffling and shuffling to the jazzy beat. And after that, all that letting loose, there'd be sweet honeysuckle juice spilling from a fountain, and poetry from the poet laureate of Ant Mountain, who'd be leading us in a special choral reading of the ants come marching one by one. Hurrah, 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 what fun! We'd be laughing so hard, nearly teary, our little anty bodies grown so weary. We'd collapse into our little antique beds, then pull the covers over our tiny heads. And if I were a worm, I'd burrow my way into soft, dark earth, carve a twisty cavern just to fit my girth, and hollow out a banquet hall where wiggling friends could join to feast on special blends of leaves and rinds of different kinds. We do the slither to some zither music strummed on instruments of pine straw. That's a sight I bet you never saw. Then for fun, in threesomes, tie ourselves in knots. Compete to see who'd untie first. Or maybe not. And if a beetle, I'd find a bottle, gather lots of stuff together, line it soft with fallen feathers, for the finest little bottle beetle home, pretty as a poem. Then for fun, it all depends, with a little help from my friends, we'd probably play some music. Come together, you see, just relax and let it be. And those other guys that stole our name, went on to fame, who cares? Got my own ticket to ride in this little bottle I'm inside. And Mouse, if I were that, I'd make my house a fine creation, but not from oven insulation. I'd know better than that, as I'm no rat. Instead, I'd find a wee hole, tiny wee in the bottom of a tree, where I'd be out of reach, you see, from owls and cats and others who don't appreciate me. Make it cozy and nice to stash my lentils and rice that I get for free. And if I were just a smaller, much, much smaller me, then I would craft a cozy little hut out of twigs and grass and shells from nuts. Find a plushy green moss rug, an acorn drinking mug, some pillows from milkweed fluff, and for a bed a mushroom puff. And after all that nature boy stuff, I'd head to the tiny, tiny Target store and buy myself the teensiest wide TV, no more. Settle back and watch The Miniaturist on BBC and sip some tiny berry tea. I'd feast on rice, a single grain. For bathing, catch a drop of rain. I'd have everything I need, quite ample. I'd stay away from birds and other things that trample. Being small, I could climb all over pebbles and plants, but other things like trees, I know I can't. And I'd make friends with hopper, worm, and ant. Invite them to my tiny house, but maybe not the mouse.